I'm Carrie O'Neill and I live in Olympia, Washington, and this is my studio. It's very small, but I make it work. So I've been playing around with collage a little bit more. Sometimes I like to work on doing collage when I'm in the middle of a bigger project and just need to do something for fun or just to keep the creative juices flowing a bit more. And one thing I really like to do is make these sheets of paper. I use this, I've just started using this sketch paper, rice paper, because it's so thin, and using some acrylic gouache on it. And also I like to use the cheapest possible brushes to create lots of texture, and then I'll use these papers for my collage work. You know, I'm a professional artist when I have a paintbrush with sparkles in the handle. So I also have this little collection of just scraps, little scraps of colorful paper. And sometimes when I'm stuck, or if it's at night and I just want to work on something, I will just grab a few scraps and then just take them and sit on the couch with some glue and some drawing pencils and just see what kind of collage I can make without any real plan to it. Eventually I'd like to do a book that's composed mostly of collage, but I'm still working on that. Okay. So I drew this little sketch last night, and I thought I would work on developing it into a collage piece. So I have these scraps that I'm going to work with. So I'm going to cut this out. So I'm just going to cut out a little outfit for her. I didn't plan any of this out. Right now I've been working on the rough art for a book that I'm working on for Little Bigfoot. It's called The Shed, and I've been primarily working doing all the rough art, and the book dummies and thumbnails have all been, I've been working on them with Procreate on my iPad, which has been a lot of fun. I got the iPad right at the beginning of this project, so I've been primarily working with that, and but I'm spending a lot of time on the computer doing all the sketches there, so it's nice to get a bit of a break and just play around with some. See, I like to use this matte gel as my glue, so that when I glue stuff down, if any glue is showing, it just kind of fades and it's not that, it doesn't give it that shiny appearance afterwards. So. And I use, you know, the cheap brushes. Let's see, I'll do some flowers. It's just kind of fun to work with different materials, and you don't really know how things are going to turn out precisely, which is nice because I find that I end up doing things too tight and it loses a lot of its life. So I think using collage is a nice way. Digitally, or add paint, and then with the final art that I'll do for my book, I think I will do some collage backgrounds and then do some drawing and painting on watercolor paper and then scan that all in. And so I'll show you some past work that was created in that way. Okay, so this is how it turned out. So it's just kind of fun to play around with supplies and just go with whatever you feel like working on that day. And here's something I did yesterday. Same thing with scraps of colored paper. So with the two little girls, that was for a prompt for my agent, Nicole To Go. She's agent who runs To Go To Agency. Every month she has a prompt that she has all of her artists respond to, kind of like the SCBWI prompt. So this was another one of the prompts that my agent put out to her clients about back to school. And for this illustration, drawing a jungle gym is not one of my favorite things to draw, so I knew I didn't want to have to draw it all over and over again to get a final piece of traditional art. So what I did was piece it together like a puzzle with all the elements being drawn separately, and then I could move them around. I was working with Photoshop at this point, so drew the jungle gym separately because I did not want to draw that over and over again. And this now I can use this for another book sometime if I wanted to include a jungle gym. So I have this, I can work with it, scan it in, and this was the background. I think similar to what Karina was doing with her work, this is what I did with a brayer, and I think I was using acrylic at this point for this. And I found it was too bright, so I was able to darken it digitally and then piece everything together. So. The book that I'm working on, called The Shed, has a lot of wood in it. So for the rough art and all the thumbnails, or I should say all the rough art, I'm doing on the Procreate, but I wanted to kind of make things a little quicker with some of the textures in the background, and instead of drawing the wood pattern every single time, I just did some ink on this watercolor paper and scanned them in, and also to make just a quick grass pattern. So those are probably the only elements that I did traditionally to add to the story for the rough art. So here I'm going to show the, it's kind of a sample title page, rough art, that I'll be turning in for the book called The Shed. It's a book written by Rob Broder for Little Bigfoot, Sasquatch, and oh yes, so Little Bigfoot, Sasquatch, it's coming out fall 2020. So here's the samples I did, the sketches. I scanned them in. I actually made layers on top of each other to make it the pattern, the wood pattern, a little richer. And so from there, I did some cutting and pasting. Let's see. From there, I started to make, I wanted to make the title out of a wood grain pattern. So this is what I was working on. This is kind of a rough background that I did. This was using Procreate brushes. I added in the grass pattern there. So this is the rough title page that I'm working with. The story, The Shed, is about a father and a daughter who decide to build a shed in their backyard, and the story goes through how they build the shed, but also how how they incorporate elements of the girl's imagination into. I can give you a little sneak peek of a few pages. This is where they're bringing the wood into the backyard and the father and daughter are dancing together. This page is an homage to Marla Frazee in Miss Bindlebox. Biddlebox. Sorry, Miss Biddlebox. You can edit that. And I wanted to add in some elements that show that it's part of her imagination. So doing the chalk on top, the chalk outline on top of the drawing. Later on, she meets a dragon. And that's part of their imagination while they're building the shed. And the shed, in the end, they incorporate her ideas into the design of the shed, and she gets to paint it how she wants it. So she designs it and adds a dragon to the story. So, and you can see I have the wood pattern behind there as well. I get the go-ahead to start working on final art. I plan to print everything out full size and then work with my light table to trace on watercolor paper the line drawing and start working on that traditionally. But with the backgrounds, I will still do those separately and compile them all in the end through Procreate and then in Photoshop. I think the thing that I like about working in that way is that I kind of don't know how it's going to turn out until the end. It still sort of has an element of surprise for me. It's not so planned out because I'm not sure how the colors will necessarily interact with the line work and what kind of shadows and highlights I can add in digitally afterwards. So it keeps it fresh for me, even though, you know, at this point I've drawn this story out. This is probably the third time I've done it, and I'll still be doing it during the final art stage, but it still brings in a fresh energy to the images.